Okay, I'm Joe Nigro, and my father's parents immigrated from Carlentini, Sicily in the early 1900s to Omaha. And Omaha has a significant Italian population, and the great majority of the Italians in Omaha are descended from the town of Carlentini. And there's a neighborhood just south of the old market called Little Italy, and the population there has changed, but many of the Italian names that, if you're from Omaha, you might be familiar with, like Caniglia or Mancuso, or they're all people from
Yeah.
Carlentini. And and so when my dad grew up in that neighborhood, it was all immigrants. He didn't speak a word of English when he started kindergarten, and then, but by the time I was born, my parents had moved away from that neighborhood, and it dispersed over time.
Yeah.
We assimilated just like every other ethnic group. But they used to have the Santa Lucia festival down in that neighborhood. They have it in another area, which was a tradition because they came from Carlentini, and I've been fortunate enough to go to Carlentini multiple times and connect with distant cousins there, and a lot of the foods I've eaten are very similar to what my grandmother used to make. And that was just a different experience because when we go to my grandparents' house, like for Sunday dinner, and my grandparents, they spoke English, but they spoke
Yeah.
Italian to each other. They spoke Italian to my dad, and so I have a strong connection to my Italian ancestry. And if you go to Carlentini and walk around and say Omaha, everybody has
Everyone.
relatives.
That's
So it's kind of cool. And people think Nigro is a really unusual name, and it's probably the most common name in the
yeah.
Carlentini cemetery. And Carlentini is on the east coast of Sicily between Catania and Syracuse, and the fourth oldest Greek settlement in Sicily is just outside of Carlentini. Sicily was a major part of ancient Greece. Syracuse was the second most important city next to Athens. And so I've driven around. I mean, there's just incredible Greek ruins all over
Yeah.
Sicily, really interesting things. And my cousins have taken me to some cool places, where you see rocks sticking out of the water, and they're the rock Cyclops threw at Odysseus.
Yeah.
And, and amphitheaters where they do Greek plays and they don't need mics because
It's
the acoustics are perfect. And Greek temples, but Sicily was controlled by everybody at some point. It was a major part of the Roman Empire, but the Phoenicians were there, the Carthaginians, the Normans, the Spanish. So my DNA is probably
yeah.
a little of everybody, but yeah, I think there are still a lot of Italians in Omaha who have a strong connection. Omaha has a long tradition of restaurants that are run by Italians. These old Italian steakhouses, there's only a few left where you get steak, baked potato, and a dish of pasta.
Oh, that sounds really good.
So, and those were a lot of the restaurants I grew up going to, and but it's really been fun to go over and connect with my relatives and that part of my heritage. And I think it's a neat part of Nebraska's history that maybe a lot of people don't know about outside of Omaha.
Yeah.
So, do you guys have any questions about any particular part of that?
I think what you said was interesting. Like when you go to Italy, or what was the name of the town?
Carlentini.
How you said it, people know what Omaha is, and I think that's really interesting because I think people don't know that Omaha has reached so many different places. So you said you went and connected with other cousins and relatives there. Have
Yeah.
any of them visited Omaha or visited Nebraska as well? Or
One of them has, yeah, yeah, and so it was fun to have him here. I don't know, I, it's cooler to visit Sicily.
Right? It's like, I'll just go visit you.
So, but especially, for the food is, of course, that's one of the great things about being Italian. The food's really good. But for my father, there's a real, it's more than foods he enjoys. There's a real emotional connection because he's eating things that are prepared the same way his mother cooked, and some of those things, he hadn't eaten in decades because his trips have been over the last decade or so, and I think I started going about 8 years ago, and it's really great. But yeah, it's funny. On one of the trips, we stayed in this little hotel right outside of town, and this waitress, her husband came to the hotel because years ago a couple of cousins had come, and they'd left him with some. He had a photo, and he wanted to know if we knew who they were, and so we could bring it back. And what's funny is when my dad saw the photo and the name, it was it was a relative of somebody who grew up 2 houses away from him. And what's funny is, so he knew this woman 2 houses away from him, and her husband was somebody he went to college with at Creighton, and their son is somebody I have met in Lincoln, and his sons, their name's Rendazzo, and it's another one of those names, and their sons went to high school with my kids. And so here this guy comes to the hotel, like hoping we might know, it's like, really, how many people are there in Omaha? And it turns out we do know them in several different, we know like 3 generations. And so that was kind of cool.
That's crazy.
Like how those
Yeah.
connections can be made. So.
So be nice to everybody because Nebraska's really small.
I know, right? That just like shows you how like small the world can be, since there's just so many, like, people come from so many places, and you're gonna you'll run into them. So that's
Yeah, yeah. And that's one of the wonderful things now with social media, because, I'm Facebook friends with all of these cousins from Sicily, and, so, it allows you to stay connected with people in ways that were never possible. So yeah, I've told Professor Steinecker that you have to do a Harvest of History for Italy sometime
yeah,
here.
no, that was really cool. That's a cool story, just to like have those connections. I don't know. That was, thank you for sharing. I mean, any like snippet of information is really neat to hear from people. So
Okay,
awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome.